It's later with Mo Kelly. KFI AM 640. We are live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. And if you've been listening to KFI, we have been covering the latest as it relates to the fires in Ventura County. And you may have known that it's a fire which started this afternoon and quickly grew to more than 10,500 acres. There have been multiple injuries which have been reported. Multiple houses, unfortunately, which have been engulfed in flames. And the latest information I have, and maybe Mark Ronner may correct me or update me if there's something which is conflicting or an additional information to this, but a number of residents were transported to hospitals to be checked for smoke inhalation. There have been some difficulties as far as getting water over the fires, dropping the water over the fires just because of the location and also the high winds. If you are new to California or if you haven't lived here most of your life, the Santa Ana winds, they are an annual occurrence and you may not get it, but it's something that we always have to deal with, and we may not think much of it until we have situations like these in which we do have these fires. It's very dangerous. It makes it very easy for these fires to spread very quickly over a large area of terrain. And Mark, did I miss anything as far as the fires?
Not that I'm aware of. We're trying to stay on top of it, and I'll let you know as soon as I find out anything new.
Yeah, so we will continue to update you over the course of the evening regarding the Ventura County fires. And if you're just tuning in, it's engulfed more than 10,500 acres, and a number of structures have burned down, unfortunately. I was watching, actually, I think it was KTLA, and they had a reporter out there, and you could see the homes burning in the background. I felt like it was almost gratuitous. I felt like I was watching someone's misery. Well, I knew I was watching someone's misery, but I felt bad seeing it happening in real time.
Yeah, that's always rough. As a reporter, I had to cover lots of fires, house fires, trailer fires, you name it. And you always have to thread that needle of letting people know information that they need to have. At the same time, there are people there who've lost or are in the process of losing their homes, and maybe they don't want to be photographed.
Right.
It's very difficult.
Right. I don't know how I would respond in that situation. I'm pretty sure I would not be approachable. I would not be amenable to an interview. Intellectually, I can understand the value of the information, but that's not a time for me as an individual. If I'm one of the people most affected, that's not the time to have a conversation with me.
No, and you really, as a reporter, you have to read the room. You have to be a little bit empathetic, and try to figure out who does look approachable, because that's one of those times you don't want to intrude upon somebody unless they're completely open to it. And I had to put myself between a photographer once and some guy who just charged at us because he didn't want us there at all. It's a very difficult situation.
I've never been in those situations. I've done reporting, but usually it's for entertainment. It was for sports, and it's a different animal altogether. And there are people who are the victims in a fire like this, and there are some people who are suffering due to collateral damage. I mean, power has been cut to some of the customers in the area just to the high wind and fire dangers. You know, you're not even directly impacted by the fires, but you're still losing power. And so this is a problem which would go well into the week, possibly into the weekend. You said there was a wind advisory, I think, until tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken.
4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon.
4 o'clock tomorrow. So, look, if you are in that area, obviously follow all evacuation orders. And Southern California Edison had already shut power by 7 a.m. to 14,000 customers. 14,000 customers across L.A. County, Riverside County, San Bernardino County, and, of course, Ventura County. And that number is probably going to go up throughout the day, probably into tomorrow, as we continue to deal with the Santa Ana winds. Something we have to unfortunately deal with every single year. And when you were reporting, Mark, what capacity were you reporting?
Well, I've done everything except sports. So, I mean, this would have been general assignment crime beat type of stuff where you head out to pretty much any awful thing that's going on, you know?
I don't know how, especially the KFI reporters, because usually when we're doing fire coverage or earthquake coverage or some sort of disaster coverage, they have to watch this up close, somehow divorce themselves from the emotions of the moment and be clear in their reporting and information gathering to make sure that we have the most accurate story possible. But you're seeing a lot of lives impacted, sometimes irrevocably.
Yeah, they're doing the work of getting people the information that they need, and it's not easy work. You've got to be smart and sensitive at the same time. Like if your house is on fire and you're looking at potentially having no place to live, pretty much the last thing on earth you want is some dope coming up to you and saying, how do you feel about this? You know?
Yeah, and not only that, the person hasn't even fully processed it. You are watching, presumably, your life, all of your belongings, sentimental value going up in flames, and you don't even know really where you're going to be that night. You're not even sure where you're going to put your family, if it's the whole family. You don't even know what tomorrow was going to bring because you didn't know that you were going to be in this situation today.
That's exactly right. And as a reporter, you have to show the same degree of understanding for somebody who lives in a trailer park that you would for somebody who lives in $1 million home. They're all people's homes.
And we often lose sight of that. We think that because someone is of a certain economic level, they won't have the same problems as someone who is more economically disadvantaged.
No. Money insulates you from many of life's problems, including, especially having a place to stay, a roof over your head.
Yeah, but there's a sentimental value which cannot be replaced. And I remember, actually, here's a sports tie-in. I remember talking to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Hey, now.
This was years after his house had burned down. But he was talking about his music collection, all the things that he couldn't replace. He was less concerned about the trophies from high school, but he was more concerned about his music collection and the pictures of his parents who are no longer living. Things like that, yeah, you may have had a career of excess and you may have more money than most who are in your orbit, but those are moments where they forever change you.
Absolutely. And you've got pets to worry about. So many things that you just can't take for granted when you're asking people questions about what they're going through at the moment.
So we're going to continue to follow the fires in Ventura County. We will have updates from the KFI 24-hour newsroom over the course of the evening as we wax and wane, talking about things going on around in Southern California. And also, we have an update as far as the presidential election. Of course, you know by now that Donald Trump has formally been declared president-elect, the 47th president-elect. And we'll also have some audio from Vice President Kamala Harris. She did give her concession speech today. We'll play just a little bit of it. I thought it was enlightening in many ways and something that I personally believe she should have delivered last night or some semblance of it. We'll get into that next. It's later with Mo Kelly. KFI AM 640. We are live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Last night, I'm quite sure, was emotional for a lot of people. But surprisingly enough, when you looked at the viewership, the TV viewership, it wasn't as riveting, or people seemingly were not as interested. If you looked at the primetime coverage of the presidential election, it averaged 42.29 million viewers across 18 cable and broadcast networks from 7 to 11 p.m. Eastern or 4 to 8 p.m. our time. Now, that's down from 4 years ago, which drew 56.92 million viewers. And it's the least watched election night since 2000, when they first started this measurement. So if anything, and this is just me spitballing here, I get the sense if I were to read into those numbers, that is probably indicative of the collective exhaustion most people had with the presidential election cycle, which seemingly never ended, and it was forever. Every single day, it was something about the presidential election across all those 18 cable and broadcast networks. And so when we finally got to the finish line, people weren't tuning in. And if you look at the total votes cast for both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, both candidates receive fewer votes this time around than in 2020. Kamala Harris was minus 17 million. Donald Trump was minus 3 to 4 million. So neither party, let's just put it in a party context, neither party increased from 2020. Neither party had the type of enthusiasm that they had in 2020. So take that for whatever it's worth. And last night, I was disappointed, just for any politician or elected official. If you have a watch party and you have literally thousands of people who show up to support you, you gotta address them. You have to, even if it's incomplete address. You don't know. It's like, hey, we're still watching the numbers. We don't know where it's going to go. We're going to wait till every vote is counted, and then we'll see what happens then. You know, when we fight, we win. Whatever it may be, you still acknowledge the people who brought you to that point. And I thought that Kamala Harris made a mistake in the sense of what I believe to be is good campaign practice and policies. But she did get around to her concession speech today, and I wanted to play a little bit of it because there's some things that I thought were interesting to me that she decided to focus on and decided to highlight. She gave it at the same location where she was yesterday at Howard University. And for me, I know it well because like my whole family went to Howard University. So in my mind, I can see it and I know what people who aren't there could see as far as how big that area is. Here's just a little bit.
So let me say, my heart is full today. My heart is full today, full of gratitude for the trust you have placed in me, full of love for our country, and full of resolve. The outcome of this election is not what we wanted, not what we fought for, not what we voted for, but hear me when I say, the light of America's promise will always burn bright. As long as we never give up and as long as we keep fighting. To my beloved Doug and our family, I love you so very much. To President Biden and Dr. Biden, thank you for your faith and support. To Governor Walz and the Walz family, I know your service to our nation will continue. And to my extraordinary team, to the volunteers who gave so much of themselves, to the poll workers and the local election officials, I thank you all. Look, I am so proud of the race we ran and the way we ran it. Over the 107 days of this campaign, we have been intentional about building community and building coalitions, bringing people together from every walk of life and background, united by love of country with enthusiasm and joy in our fight for America's future. And we did it with the knowledge that we all have so much more in common than what separates us. Now, I know folks are feeling and experiencing a range of emotions right now. I get it. But we must accept the results of this election. Earlier today, I spoke with President-elect Trump and congratulated him on his victory. I also told him that we will help him and his team with their transition, and that we will engage in a peaceful transfer of power.
Dignified response. Dignified. That's what you're supposed to do. It's not anything special. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to concede, call the other side, congratulate them, and if you are a part of the sitting administration, then you pledge to help them in that transition. That's just chalk, as they say. That's standard.
A fundamental principle of American democracy is that when we lose an election, we accept the results. That principle, as much as any other, distinguishes democracy from monarchy or tyranny. And anyone who seeks the public trust must honor it. At the same time, in our nation, we owe loyalty not to a president or a party, but to the Constitution of the United States.
Now, if you are a Kamala Harris supporter, you may ask the question, well, what's next for her? Historically, and I know when I say historically, we're in unprecedented times, so history usually doesn't matter when you're talking about present day politics. But historically, when you lose an election, Donald Trump aside, because you can't use the history to talk about Donald Trump. But historically, when you lose a presidential election, that's usually the end of your political career. Usually you go on and do something else. You may move into the private sector. You may go on the lecture circuit. But you usually move on from politics because there's really nowhere else for you to go. Kamala Harris, she could possibly be in the future, maybe someone's attorney general candidate or something if there were a Democratic president down the road. But as far as her political future, this is probably it because there's nowhere else for her to go unless she were to take a step back and run for governor or something like that. But this is probably the end for her because that's just the way it usually is. Especially when you're vice president, you can look at Paul Ryan when he was a part of that ticket. That was pretty much the end of his political career. Obviously, Dan Quayle, that was the end of his career. Al Gore, that was the end of his career. Now, you had George H.W. Bush, who managed to become president. He was like the only one to move from vice president to president from administration to administration in the past maybe 140 years or so. So it's rare that it does happen, but usually when it doesn't happen, that's the end. When you run for president and you lose, you're pretty much done. John Kerry didn't do anything after that. Michael Dukakis didn't do anything after that. John McCain went back to the Senate, but didn't do anything after that. And that's what usually happens. This is probably the end of her political career. And that's just the way it goes. That's just the way it goes. And the Democrats will have to regroup and look at themselves and see what they did wrong or see what they can improve upon. Because for the next at least 2 years, can't say 4 years, next 2 years, they're going to be subject to the whims of the Republican Party because they probably won't be able to take over the House. I'm just looking at the numbers in the tea leaves. The math is not looking good for them at this moment, but still they have a lot of races they have to finish counting and deciding. So it looks more like there's going to be a Republican House, Republican Senate, Republican Oval Office, and a Republican, or I should say conservative Supreme Court. So there's not much the Democrats can do in the near term except try to change something in 2026 in the midterms.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
If you've ever been shopping, and we've all been shopping, but some of us are a little bit more, I would say, sensitive to sales. It could be, I don't know, Amazon Prime Day. It could be Black Friday. You think there's a sale. Everything's going to be deep discount. I need to go buy something that I don't even need, something I may not even be able to afford, but it's marked down 70%. I can't pass up the deal. Have you ever been there? That's not usually me, but I can say, if I'm honest, it's gotten me sometimes. It's like, oh, this computer is 70% off. I don't need a computer, but when might I have another opportunity to buy a computer for 70% off? And then you get it and you realize, you know what? I really didn't need to spend this $400 or $500 on this computer that I didn't need with money I really didn't have just because it was marked down. That is what I felt the moment that I saw, that I read, that the LA County Board of Supervisors has approved the purchase of the gas company tower You know about it. It's downtown. It's just sitting there. It's vacant. It was appraised at a value of $632 million back in 2020 during the pandemic. $632 million. They're going to buy it for $200 million, which is less than 1/3 of the price. Is it a great deal? Yes, it's a great deal. I just didn't know, and maybe I'm just late to the party, but I didn't know that the LA County Board of Supervisors was in the real estate business of buying skyscrapers. Never in my life have I heard about the LA County Board of Supervisors, and it's not unanimous. It's not unanimous. In fact, Janice Hahn said, hell no. And that's a quote. And that's where I come out on this. Hell no. I don't know if they're going to buy the building and turn it into homeless housing. I don't know if they're going to buy the skyscraper and turn it into a museum. And maybe they'll put a rooftop club. You can go there in the summer. I don't know if they're going to turn it into a concert venue. I don't know what they're going to do with it. Mark, I know you had the story. Weren't they going to put like the LA County Board of Supervisors main offices there or some stupid stuff like that?
I think I have that coming up, and I am not 100% schooled on it yet, so I will defer to you, Mo.
That's okay, but this approval, I mean, it's been approved 4-1. 4-1. They gave county officials the final green light to move ahead with buying the tower for $200 million. And if you have $200 million laying around that you're just not using, because this is an impulse buy.
You never know when you're going to need something to tag.
Well, they're already tagging it.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's legendary for it being tagged.
All right.
If you've seen the building, they've done stories on this building being tagged. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a nice building.
Well, who doesn't love art?
It's $200 million. In other words, it wasn't like the LA County Board of Supervisors, to the best of my knowledge, they're free to correct me. It wasn't like they were already in the market for a skyscraper. It'd be different. Like, for example, Tuala and I, we were in the market for a car. So if we were to see a heavily discounted car, which met our needs, that's one thing. But for example, if we were not in the market for a house and we come across a house which is 70% off.
Too good to pass up.
And let's say it's listing at $700,000 when usually it's $2.1 million. That's probably an ill-advised purchase. Now, if you happen to be a real estate developer, if you happen to be a house flipper, and it's something that you normally do, then you ought to go ahead and do that because that's what you do. You can turn it into a monetary opportunity, but it's within your sphere of what you do. But the LA County Board of Supervisors, last I checked, they're not in the business of real estate.
Yeah, I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know?
I don't know because if you look back, I think this was in June where they purchased that high-rise tenement. It was some 230 or 270 something units for goo gobs of money for the purpose of housing the homeless. Mayor Bass was behind it. The Board of Supervisors were behind it.
No, I remember that. Sorry to cut you off, but I'm saying that was for the LA County and the business of LA County.
Right. So they're just expanding, Mo. They're expanding their real estate profile. That's what I'm saying. This is expanding.
Oh, I have yet to see anyone say, "Oh, yeah, this is going to be for the homeless."
Well. If they set up their headquarters there, why not dedicate several floors to the unhoused? They need the space. They keep talking about we don't have the space. You buy this building, you got the rooms.
Okay, here we go. This is what Supervisor Janice Hahn had to say. And I'm quoting, quote, "None of you here are going to convince me that this is a good idea." Hell no. I'm not too far off on this one. I'm on the hell no side.
What if they named the building after you? The Mo Kelly building.
See, look at him right now.
I'm thinking about it.
See, you in radio land can't see his face. It's all of a sudden his eyebrows went up.
Well, since you bring that
I won't
up,
rule it out of hand. Okay.
there we go.
But I will say this to be absolutely serious. It's not that it's 70% off or whatever. It's just that it's a $200 million purchase. And it doesn't seem like there was a clear plan in place before the purchase was approved. Yes, they're going to be moving over county employees. Yes, this is going to be like the new headquarters and everything. I'm not exactly sure. And according to at least Janice Hahn, there hasn't been evidence given that this is necessary. This is an impulse purchase, largely because it's 70% off. Oh my gosh, the building is 70% off. And it's not even Black Friday in November. I gotta have it. I just gotta have it.
well, rule number one of American shopping, Mo, is that you got to spend money to save money. And subsection 1A of that is there's no such thing as enough ever.
But talk about how what a great deal this is. The cost of the building is going to be $200 million, but officials have estimated it will cost hundreds of millions to upgrade either this building or their old buildings to make it a worthy alternative. So it's not going to be just the cost of the building because it's not even finished yet. There's plenty more that they have to sink into this building. It's not like it's real estate term. It's not turnkey. It's not like you can just, plop down the money and move in tomorrow. It's move in ready. No, it isn't.
A fixer-upper.
It's a $200 million fixer-upper.
I mean, come on. What is
wrong with this county?
What is $200 million for the county?
What is wrong with this county? $200 million. $200 million. Largely business offices. Just for the... It doesn't do anything.
You don't see the future. This can be converted. Low-income housing for the individuals who work for the county. All types of things can go on in this building.
Wait, it gets worse. Oh. No supervisors have toured the building themselves.
Okay.
Show some respect when you're talking about the...
They've seen it on the internet. They haven't seen it in person.
That's the new way. No. Virtual tours.
You can buy the house that you've never even walked through.
Well, they have a slideshow online.
They do.
This county in nowhere. $200 million for a building they haven't even walked in.
Oh, no. Okay, someone from the county. I know you don't want to take this ridicule line down. Please, you've got to come on the show so you can explain yourselves. You've got to come on so you can explain yourselves.
They were swayed by the sales pitch of this opportunity will not last forever.
You're acting like they bought a can of beans, a magic beans.
$200 million for a building they haven't even walked through. We deserve everything we get. KFI is exporting $200 million. Mark.
That's a hell of a way to talk about the future Mo Kelly School of Broadcast Excellence and the homeless. Okay.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
We were real over last segment, and I blamed Tuala Sharp because he was wasting time trying to defend the LA County Board of Supervisors with that dumbass move to buy a $200 million building just because it was marked down from $632 million. Didn't even need a building, but we're gonna let that go. I'm not gonna bring up old stuff. I'm not gonna hold on to it like a grudge or anything. My wife says I do that too much, so I'm trying to be better. I don't like to fly, and I really don't like to fly since the pandemic, because before the pandemic, I was worried about ending up in the side of a mountain. Okay. That was just the flying aspect of it. And Robin, I appreciate you working the board tonight. Just don't laugh at me. Okay. I see you laughing at my fear of flying. I got B's and flying. All right. I'm an imperfect, complicated dude. But since the pandemic, the way people have been acting up on planes left and right, it's a whole different ball game. I got to worry about the airplane and the people on the airplane. Just random people who will decide, will get a wild hair up their ass and walk down the aisle and decide to open an emergency exit or at least try?
That happened with me once.
Okay, let me stand down on my story so you can tell, since you have firsthand experience with it.
There's not much to tell except I needed a change of pants promptly. He was stopped, and they don't. The doors don't just open. You
I know,
can't
because
just
of
walk
air
back and
pressure,
open
but still.
But I didn't spot it till the guy was in the process of doing it, and he was promptly stopped. But it'll get your attention.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will. And if you are probably like Mark Ronner, let's say you're 15, 16 rows back, you are subject to the whims of everything which is going on in the front of the plane, and you have no control or no say. You're just there. You're a passenger. You're an observer. You're just a bystander.
You grow up reading superhero comics. You think you're going to do something about everything. You don't realize everything in life tends to happen kind of fast.
Really fast. And you may not even realize it's happening until it's already happened.
Exactly.
In this story, an unruly passenger was beaten to a pulp after attempting to open an emergency door on a flight from Brazil to Panama. They even have some video of it. Quote, a flight attendant started screaming. Let me stop right there. When a flight attendant loses her ish or his ish, either or, you know that you're in trouble, because usually they are the marker as to whether you're in danger or not. When you have a lot of turbulence, what do? You look at the flight attendant to see if they're sweating, to see if they are uncomfortable, if they are worried. Because if they're worried, then it's time for you to be worried, because they can no longer hide their fear. So imagine a flight attendant screaming. All hell breaks loose after that. But let me get back to this. A flight attendant started screaming, and another tried to hold him back, but couldn't because he was too strong. The fight broke out yesterday, aboard a Copa Airlines flight from Brazil to Panama City. And they show photos of it there. At least there are a lot of young dudes on the flight, because they had like 7 or 8 dudes beat the crap out of this guy. They beat him something awful. And I'm okay with that. I'm not against violence. Especially when it comes to saving my life. If you need violence to take out someone who's getting ready to take out all of us, by all means, proceed. The flight, and this was relatively late in the flight. So it's not like something he decided to do early on. We're talking about 30 minutes before landing. So it seems to me they probably were already in the midst of their descent. And going back to Mark's story, if they were in their descent, they might have been at an altitude where pressure was such, he might have been able to get the door open. I'm not like a aerodynamics expert or.
Well, you've seen Goldfinger. You know how
I have. And I've seen people jump out of planes in many movies, so I know a little something about this. But I've never, so I can only guesstimate that was part of the calculation. Since the flight was in its descent, 30 minutes or so before landing, that they may have been in an altitude where he could have forced the door open. The said flyer rushed to the back of the plane with a plastic knife from his food tray and attempted to take a flight attendant hostage with the goal of opening the plane door. Now, I'm probably eyes closed, relaxing, hopefully snoring the last portion of the flight, because I don't like takeoffs. I don't like landings. They stress me out. And when we're getting ready to land, I need to have both my feet flat on the floor, and I'm getting ready to brace for that impact. I've never had a really bad instance, but I did have a time landing at Burbank Airport. Have you ever landed at Burbank, Mark?
Many times.
Short runway, real short runway. And there are times where they've had planes skid off into the street.
Oh, God.
Oh, no, true story. This, on my flight, I could tell that the pilot lost control after landing. And so we were wildly swaying and the wings were tipping, almost scraped the ground. And this was at Burbank, so it was a short runway. And so we didn't have a lot of time before we'd end up on Hollywood Way. Somehow, some way, he managed to stop. Thank you, Jesus.
If there's a round of applause in the cabin after they land, it's been bad. Yeah,
there was. It's almost like it was this eerie silence, because we almost bought it, right?
Yeah,
we almost
lived. Yeah,
and the flight attendant on my flight was saying like, long pause. Thank you for flying American Airlines. There's nothing she could say because we were all thinking the same thing. We barely escaped death. And so anyhow, but my point is with this story, the passengers realized that the flight attendant was being taken hostage. So they got together. It might have been like a soccer team or something. They all seemed like the same age. And they got up and they collectively beat the crap out of this guy. There are pictures of him. He's bloody. There's blood everywhere. And it's like Strange. That's what I would want.
Hey, that's too bad that he got injured. Jeez.
Well, look, if they would have killed him, I wouldn't have been angry.
Oh, yeah, right.
Look, if you're trying to open the door, that's attempted murder. It is. So go ahead and handle it. Street justice. That's why I don't like flying, because there are just too many idiots out there now, especially since the pandemic. Folks forgot how to act on a plane since the pandemic.
They should hand out a sock with a bar of soap in it to all the passengers as you're boarding.
So they give out a code red like in Full Metal Jacket?
You need a code red sometimes. You're damn right.
Did you order the code red? I want answers. I want the truth.
You can't handle it.
Did you order the code? I'm losing my voice. My voice is just gone. That's after doing 5.5 hours of election coverage last night. Let's just go to break. My voice is done. KFI AM 640. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
One, two, three.
This election brought to you by Counting. Counting is not as confusing as it sounds.
KFI
And KOST HD2.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
Live.